In this video, you'll learn why another global panic could financially destroy millions of people, why the next pandemic may hit harder economically than COVID, how fear alone can crash markets before a virus even spreads, why wealthy people often get richer during crises, while average people fall deeper into debt, how modern banking systems quietly profit from instability, why most people are completely unprepared for another economic shutdown, what actually happened aboard the mysterious Hantavirus cruise ship, how governments reacted during COVID, and why the next crisis could look very different, why inflation makes modern society far more fragile than it was in 2020, and most importantly, how normal people can financially survive another global crisis before panic starts spreading again.
Imagine waking up tomorrow and seeing the exact same headlines people saw in 2020. Mysterious virus, emergency meetings, quarantine ships, panic spreading online faster than the actual disease. Except this time, the virus kills almost half the people infected. Sounds like a Netflix movie, except this is a real story people started talking about online after reports connected a strange hantavirus outbreak to a cruise expedition near Antarctica. And before we continue, no, this video is not fear propaganda, and no, experts are not saying this will become another COVID. But the reason this story matters is because it exposes something much bigger. Most people are still financially unprepared for another global panic, because during COVID, the virus was only half the problem. The real disaster was economic. Businesses collapsed, inflation exploded, millions lost their jobs, governments printed trillions, and the rich quietly became richer while average people drowned in debt. Now people online are once again asking the same question. What happens if another virus spreads globally? And what happens to your money if society panics again? So first, we need to understand what hantavirus actually is. Hantavirus is not one single virus. It's an entire family of viruses, mostly carried by rodents like rats, mice, and field mice. Usually, humans get infected by breathing contaminated particles from rodent waste, saliva, or urine, especially in places like barns, basements, storage areas, or abandoned rural buildings. For rodents, the virus often causes little or no symptoms, but humans are different, and in some strains, the mortality rate can be terrifyingly high. According to reports surrounding this recent case, some forms linked to hantavirus infections can have fatality rates approaching 40%. For comparison, COVID's estimated mortality rate was dramatically lower. The good news is that historically, hantavirus has not spread easily between humans, and that is exactly why scientists usually never considered it a major pandemic threat, until people started discussing the Andes strain, a rare version believed to allow limited human-to-human transmission during prolonged close contact. And that's where the internet started losing its mind. Because according to the reports, the outbreak may have started aboard an expedition cruise ship called the MV Hondius, traveling near Antarctica and South Atlantic islands. Passengers were reportedly exploring remote natural environments, interacting with wildlife and potentially contaminated areas. Then people started getting sick. One passenger developed symptoms on board, later died. Then more severe cases appeared, including pneumonia, respiratory failure, and additional deaths connected to the cluster. Soon, quarantine procedures started. Passengers were isolated, emergency evacuations happened. Countries began monitoring travelers who had already left the ship and returned home. And if this sounds familiar, that's because the beginning of every modern panic looks the same. Confusion, uncertainty, conflicting information, government statements, internet conspiracy theories, social media hysteria. Within days, people online were already comparing it to COVID, talking about lockdowns, economic collapse, supply shortages, market crashes, and another global recession. Now, realistically, most experts still believe hantavirus is nowhere near as transmissible as COVID. But honestly, that almost doesn't matter anymore, because after 2020, society learned something dangerous. Fear itself can crash economies.
During COVID, millions of people didn't lose money because they got sick. They lost money because the entire system froze. Businesses shut down, supply chains collapsed, flights stopped, restaurants died, small businesses disappeared overnight, and governments responded by printing absurd amounts of money, which created the inflation people are still struggling with today. And if another global health scare happened tomorrow, most people are financially weaker now than they were in 2020. More debt, higher rent, higher food prices, higher mortgage payments, higher car payments, less savings. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. Another pandemic would not hit everyone equally. It would absolutely destroy people already living paycheck to paycheck, because rich people own assets. Average people own monthly payments. The wealthy have investments, businesses, real estate, cash flow, and emergency reserves, while millions of normal people are one missed paycheck away from panic mode. And that is exactly why every major crisis transfers wealth upward. Because when fear enters the system, most people sell at the bottom, panic, freeze, and financially collapse, while prepared people quietly buy opportunities in the background. COVID already proved this once. The stock market crashed, then exploded upward. Real estate surged. Billionaires gained massive wealth, while average workers got buried under inflation. So no, this video is not about hiding in a bunker because of Hantavirus. It's about understanding how fragile modern society actually is. Because the next global panic, whether it's a virus, banking crisis, war, or recession, will financially expose millions of people again. And most people still are not prepared for it. Here's what most people still don't understand about events like this. Pandemics don't destroy economies overnight. Panic does. Because the second people believe something dangerous is spreading, the system starts reacting immediately, even before the actual threat is fully understood. Airlines lose bookings, investors dump stocks, companies freeze hiring, governments begin emergency meetings, and suddenly the entire economy starts slowing down out of fear. We already watched this happen during COVID. At first, people laughed. Then a few weeks later, entire countries shut down. And honestly, the scariest part is that the world today is even more fragile financially than it was back then. During the first pandemic, interest rates were near zero. Governments had room to print trillions, people still had savings, food was cheaper, housing was cheaper, and debt levels were lower. Today, it's the complete opposite. Inflation already destroyed purchasing power, millions of people are drowning in credit card debt, rent is out of control, mortgages became unaffordable, and entire economies are being held together by consumers continuing to spend money they don't actually have. That's why another major global panic could become less of a health crisis and more of a financial chain reaction. Because modern society runs on confidence. Confidence that people will keep buying, confidence that businesses will keep operating, confidence that banks stay stable, confidence that supply chains continue moving. The moment fear breaks confidence, everything starts shaking. And we already see hints of that happening whenever stories like this appear online. Social media immediately explodes with conspiracy theories, people start talking about lockdowns again, investors begin speculating, meme coins appear within hours, because the internet has turned fear into entertainment. But underneath the memes, there's a real financial lesson hiding here. Most people are dangerously dependent on normal life continuing exactly as it is. Think about the average person for a second. They wake up, drive a financed car, to a job they dislike, to pay for an apartment they barely afford, while carrying credit card debt, student loans, subscriptions, and almost no emergency savings.
Their entire financial survival depends on uninterrupted monthly income, which means if the economy suddenly slows down, even temporarily, millions instantly enter survival mode. And this is exactly why crises hit poor and middle-class people the hardest. Wealthy people usually have time. They have investments, cash reserves, businesses, multiple income streams, assets producing money in the background. While average people only have active income. If they stop working, the money stops completely. That difference changes everything during economic chaos. During COVID, we saw millions panic sell investments near the bottom, while large institutions quietly bought assets at discounts. We saw small businesses collapse, while massive corporations grew larger. We saw money printing inflate stocks, housing, and asset prices, while normal salaries barely kept up. And the result was one of the biggest wealth transfers in modern history. Which is why smart investors pay attention during moments like this. Not because they want disaster to happen, but because crises expose weaknesses in the financial system. Every recession reveals who was overleveraged. Every panic reveals who had no emergency fund. Every crash reveals who built real wealth and who was only pretending to look wealthy. And honestly, that's probably the biggest illusion in modern society. Most people who look rich are completely trapped financially. Expensive car, luxury apartment, designer clothes, financed lifestyle. But behind the scenes, they have almost no actual security. Because real wealth is invisible. It's ownership, investments, cash flow, low debt, emergency reserves, skills, businesses, and patience. The scary part about another global crisis isn't just the virus itself. It's realizing how many people are financially one emergency away from collapse. And if something like COVID happened again while inflation is already high, things could get ugly very fast. And if you really think about it, most people never actually recovered from the first pandemic. They just adapted to being financially stressed all the time. Prices went up, salaries barely moved, groceries doubled, insurance exploded, housing became absurd, and people normalized surviving on debt. Credit cards became emergency funds, buy now, pay later became normal, financing food became normal, financing vacations became normal. Society quietly became addicted to borrowed money.
And that works perfectly during stable times.
But the second uncertainty enters the system, everything starts breaking at once. Because debt makes people fragile. The average person today doesn't just need income, they need constant, uninterrupted income every single month. Because if the paycheck stops, the entire machine collapses immediately. Car payment, rent, mortgage, subscriptions, loans, insurance, groceries. Everything keeps charging whether the economy is healthy or not. That's why during every crisis, the first emotion people feel is not fear of the disease, it's fear of losing money, fear of unemployment, fear of bills, fear of instability, fear of uncertainty. Because modern life is incredibly expensive to maintain. And if another major pandemic scare happened tomorrow, governments would probably react much differently this time. During COVID, central banks printed historic amounts of money to stabilize the economy. Stimulus checks, business loans, emergency programs, low interest rates. But today, inflation is already a massive problem, which means governments are trapped. Print too much money again, and inflation could explode even further. Don't print enough, and businesses start collapsing. Either way, average people get squeezed in the middle. This is why learning how money actually works matters more now than ever before, because crises reward preparation. And honestly, most financial advice online completely ignores this. People obsess over tiny things: what stock to buy, what crypto coin will explode, how to get rich quickly, while completely ignoring the fundamentals that actually protect you during chaos: emergency savings, low debt, multiple income streams, valuable skills, long-term investing, emotional control. Those boring fundamentals become life-changing during unstable periods. Because when panic spreads, most people stop thinking rationally. They panic sell investments, they overreact, they consume fear all day online. They make emotional decisions, and emotional financial decisions are usually destructive.
The people who survive crises best are usually the calmest people in the room, not because they're geniuses, but because they prepared before things went wrong. And that preparation does not mean building a bunker in the woods. It means building financial resilience, having enough savings to survive temporary instability, having skills that remain valuable even during recessions, having investments working in the background, understanding that crises are temporary even when they feel permanent. Because if you zoom out historically, every major panic eventually created opportunities too. After crashes, markets recover, businesses adapt, technology advances, new industries appear, and the people who stayed rational usually come out stronger on the other side. That's exactly what happened after 2020. Remote work exploded, AI accelerated, online businesses grew massively, digital creators became businesses, investing became mainstream. Entire industries were created from chaos. Which means if another global panic ever happened, the biggest winners probably wouldn't be the people hiding from the world. It would be the people who adapt the fastest, the people who stay calm, the people who continue building, the people who understand how money moves during uncertainty. Because every crisis changes behavior, and behavior changes where money flows. That's the real reason wealthy people pay attention during instability. Not because they enjoy disaster, but because volatility creates opportunities most people are too emotional to see. And this is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Because if another pandemic-level event happened tomorrow, millions of people would once again wait for someone else to save them. Governments, employers, banks, corporations, while the people who prepared financially beforehand would have options. And options are one of the most valuable things money can buy. The option to leave a bad job, the option to survive unemployment, the option to invest during crashes, the option to avoid panic decisions, the option to think clearly while everyone else is emotional. That is real financial freedom. Not flexing luxury online, not pretending to be rich, not financing status symbols, but building enough stability that crises do not instantly destroy your life.
So if there's one thing regular people should learn from all of this, it's that you do not need to predict the next pandemic to prepare for it financially. Because the truth is, nobody knows what happens next. Maybe Hantavirus disappears from the headlines next week. Maybe nothing serious happens at all. And honestly, hopefully that's exactly what happens. But financial preparedness is valuable even if another global crisis never comes. Because emergencies are guaranteed in life one way or another. Recessions happen, layoffs happen, health problems happen, inflation happens, unexpected bills happen. And the people who survive these moments best are usually the people who prepared before the panic started.
So the first thing you should focus on is building an emergency fund. Even a few months of expenses completely changes your stress levels during uncertainty. Because when everyone else is panicking about rent, food, and bills, you at least buy yourself time. And time is incredibly powerful during crises. The second thing is reducing unnecessary debt as much as possible, because debt turns every emergency into a disaster. High car payments, credit cards, pointless subscriptions, financing things you don't actually need, all of it makes you more fragile when the economy slows down. The third thing is learning skills that remain useful no matter what happens. During COVID, millions of people suddenly realized how valuable online skills became. Editing, writing, coding, marketing, AI tools, sales, content creation. The internet created opportunities even while the world was shutting down. And the same thing would happen again during another crisis, because adaptable people always survive better than comfortable people. The fourth thing is controlling your emotions. This one matters more than people realize, because every major panic creates two groups: people who emotionally react to everything and people who stay calm enough to think clearly. Fear spreads extremely fast online, especially today. Algorithms profit from panic, media profits from panic, social media profits from panic, and if you spend all day consuming fear, your decision-making gets worse. That's why during uncertainty, the ability to stay rational becomes a financial advantage.
And finally, understand this. Real wealth is not about looking rich during good times. Real wealth is being stable during bad times. Because anybody can look successful when the economy is easy. Cheap debt, rising markets, easy money, constant growth. But real financial discipline gets revealed during instability. That's when you discover who built actual security and who only built appearances. And honestly, that may be the biggest lesson COVID already taught the world. Modern society is far less stable than people assumed. Supply chains can fail, economies can freeze, jobs can disappear, governments can panic, inflation can explode. And most people are not nearly as financially prepared as they think they are. So no, this video is not telling you to live in fear of hantavirus. It's telling you to stop assuming stability is guaranteed forever. Because the people who survive crises best are usually not the smartest people. They are the most prepared people. The next global panic may never happen, but if it does, the people with savings, skills, discipline, and emotional control will always suffer less than the people relying entirely on luck. And if you made it this far into the video, subscribe, because this channel is about understanding money, the economy, and the systems controlling modern life before most people realize what's happening. Stay sharp, stay calm, and don't let panic make financial decisions for you.